What is happening, people? So a big info drop today. Famitsu interview with Kitase and Nomura talking about FF7 Rebirth, a little bit of reunion stuff. We're just going to jump right into it. Shout out to Audrey on Twitter. She always kills it with these translations. There were a couple of other websites that had some additional kind of things up, but I'm just going to read the interview real quick, and then we'll talk about some thoughts from the other stuff that the websites had reported. So the interviewer asked, do you plan on making other remakes from the compilation? For example, Dirge Cerberus, Vice, and Nero's voices were in Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, and they also appeared in FF7 Intergrade. Will they make another appearance? Nomura says, our staff really wanted to do a remaster of Dirge Cerberus as well as before Crisis FF7, but after taking into consideration the cost of doing so, we do not have plans at this time. We wanted them to show up in FF7 Intergrade because we wanted all of the FF7 titles to be connected with a common world. They also appeared as very formidable bosses, so that's why we decided on that. That makes sense. So they may or may not pop back up. Interesting. I see. Let's talk about FF7 Ever Crisis. We saw a younger Sephiroth with shorter hair at the end of the trailer, correct? Nomura says that's right. Since FF7 The First Soldier's World is also included, there will be an episode regarding First Soldier as well, so the Sephiroth backstory. So we got that one right, people. We got that one right. Let's move on to FF7 Rebirth now. We see Cloud and Sephiroth walking together, and that's a scene from Cloud's flashback, right? Nomura says yes, that is correct. Due to some rules regarding what info we can show, the UI has a portion of it that is turned off. Interesting. This made some people think that it's a new scene, but I just wanted to clear that up. Ha 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 ha, laughs. Kitase says the mountains in the background are very distinct, so I hope it allows you to recall the original's location. Yeah, he's not telling you it's Mount Nibel, but he's saying, hey, hopefully everybody remembers that. In the original, Sephiroth joins your party and fights with you in the flashback. Will that happen again? Nomura says, please wait for more information regarding that. In that scene with Sephiroth, you can see that the distance to the destination is quite far. It seems like the maps are extremely huge. That's something that we pointed out in the reaction here on the channel, if you all recall. That I think it was 1,060 meters. It was something huge. So I'm glad they're bringing that up here. Nomura says, I can't talk about that much yet, but it is very vast. Kitase says, I hope you can recall the original as well. Once you left Midgar, you had a feeling of, well, where do we go now? They've been hinting that this thing is going to be some kind of form of open world. I'm going to keep going, but they have really been leaning hard, and this will be some sort of open world-ish type of thing. So, with such a vast world that opens up for you, anyone would be excited to start on their journey. In the trailer, we also see Zack carrying Cloud on his shoulders as they make their way back to Midgar. Nomura says, yes, we hope that FF7 Rebirth will give you that feeling of opening up to the journey. Zack is a key character in this game, so please look forward to it. I'm sure there are different possibilities regarding that scene, and really makes you theorize. Well, since you mentioned there will be 3 parts, where exactly will FF7 Rebirth cover? Nomura says we have not announced until recently how many parts the story will be, as we actually were considering whether to do it in 2 or 3 parts. That's interesting to me. To do it in 2 parts would have been crazy if the whole first game was just Midgar. Interesting. Only 2 parts. Since FF7R only covered Midgar, it left us with the impression there might be 3 or even 4 parts. And yeah, I said, look, I want this to be 3, but don't be surprised if it's 4. The original game was only on 3 discs with the international version on 4. Nomura says, we started planning with 3 parts in mind, but there was a time when Kitase suggested we actually divide it into 2 parts. That would have been wild. That would have been wild to see how big that second game would have had to have been. Kitase says, it was one of the ideas I had among the many different ideas we were tossing around. When we were planning FF7R Remake, it was difficult to see exactly how much manpower it would take. But after completing Remake, we had a much better picture of how much manpower and what type of schedule it would require. That's why I had a thought that we might be able to reach the ending with even the next installment. Nomura says, at the moment we do not plan to do more than a trilogy. However, since Remake only took place in Midgar, people might be worried that the remaining 2 installments will have too much content and we might have to omit something. Rest assured that we will not condense things, as each installment has a lot to offer. The interviewer goes on to say, the amount of content to cover after leaving Midgar is a lot, so we're looking forward to it. The game will be released next winter, so that's very soon. It will only be a year and a half away, so before that, we will also have Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion and FF7 Ever Crisis. There's also First Soldier, which is already available, yeah. Nomura says, that's right, I did not want fans to just patiently wait for Remake Part 3, so I wanted to allow fans to continue enjoying the world of FF7 and connect them to the trilogy. Our staff are doing their best, so we hope you can look forward to the game. Kitase says the base part of FF7 Rebirth is completed, and right now we're in the mass production phase. We are making great progress on the game, so please wait a bit longer. Okay, that was some good stuff. It really answered a lot of things. But then I went on Gematsu, and they had a really, really good breakdown of everything in Rebirth. So here, this is bullet points, but it says both Remake and Rebirth have a similar meaning, being newly born, and we knew that already. Also, if we called it Remake 2, it might give the impression there'll be a 3, 4, 5, and so on, blah, blah, blah. They didn't want to call it Remake 2 because they didn't want it to just feel like there's going to be reeling off numbered things. They wanted everything to have its own vibe, its own feel. Each game to have its own kind of presence, and I think that's pretty smart storytelling. The reason for the delay in the announcing of Rebirth was because we were not sure whether it would be a two-part work or a trilogy. They covered that in the other one. Usually when it comes to Final Fantasy series, only the core members are retained after the this is interesting. I liked this bit right here. Only the core members are retained after the completion of a game, while most of the other staff move over to other teams. However, since the Final Fantasy VII Remake project was decided to be released in multiple parts from the start, the same team was able to start work on the sequel while maintaining their teamwork, know-how, and momentum, so develop has been extremely fast. However, due to the large amount of resources required, there's no time for rest and things are always moving at full speed. The fundamental parts are complete and we're currently in the mass production stage. Development is going well. That's interesting. They kept the whole team, like the whole development team. They just kept working. That's interesting, because that's not always how it goes, especially with Square Enix. We've already begun work on areas such as plot and scenario for the third title. They're already working on parts of the third title. We might get that third title in 2026. I mean, I really think they're trying to get this thing out. They're trying to get it done. But it seems like their workflow is very polished. Their workflow is extremely polished on this, and this kind of confirms that. This interview does. Just as we created Midgar so that fans of the original Final Fantasy VII can appreciate it, we're taking care to develop Rebirth as not to ruin the image that fans have of the original. For that reason, the volume is quite massive. Look, I'm telling you all, that feeling I've been having that they are just straight up just blending things, and they are using a different story device to actually remake Final Fantasy VII. Like, I really feel like that's what they're doing. I'm really starting to lean more than 50-50 in that direction now. So anyway, continuing. We hear the concerns of fans asking, can the story really be told in a trilogy, and will it be trimmed down to a digest version? But it will not be a digest. It will not be an abridged version or something smaller. As for whether the game will be open world or not, that will be announced with the next information release. The next bit of information on Rebirth, they're going to answer the question. Is it open world? How will traversing the world work? It says it right here. They're going to, in the next information release for this game, which it could be spring of 2023. We don't know when the next information release for this is going to be, but in the next one, we're going to get the answer, and they're going to explain it to us what their version of that is. So they might say open world, but it won't be like a lot of people think of open world or whatever. So we'll see. They've promised to announce that on the next information release, so I'll be looking forward to that. The general systems from Final Fantasy VII Remake will carry over, so yeah, battle systems and all that kind of stuff. That was pretty much assumed, I believe. The scene in which Cloud and Sephiroth are walking together in the trailer is a Cloud flashback scene. They covered that in those translations. The main character's 3D models haven't changed, however, some characters have been adjusted, such as Yuffie's model, which we touched up from Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. Look, I'm not trying to say anything, but I've said my whole, theory of who was inside of the singularity and who wasn't. Yuffie was not inside the singularity, so adjusting her character model makes sense. I'm just saying. Anyway, moving on. The focal point of the story hasn't been changed. As for the new mysteries that differ from the original Final Fantasy VII, players of the original will be able to enjoy the game in a new way. The challenge we tackled for this project was how to include those new mysteries without deviating from the original. Black Materia, Summon Meteor. I think we get there, people. I think by the end of Rebirth, it's going to be clear that we are going to get there. I like that. Regarding game progression, there will be some changes. If while you're playing you think, was this cut? It's because the structure of the story has changed a bit due to the nature of it being a trilogy. Although the order in which you visit some places may change, our policy is essentially not to cut anything. So you might go to the Forgotten Capital before the Temple of the Ancients or something like that. It's something like that. I'm not predicting that, but something like that. But those things will still happen. I think that's cool. I think that's a great way to do it. And it's kind of a surprise for people when you can access that thing you were waiting for. You didn't get it when you thought you were going to get it, and you get it later. That's great. That's great. And that's what a lot of us have been saying they're probably going to do with this thing. So I'm really excited about that. I love this little bit of information they've had come out. And then they go on to talk about why they put it on PS5 exclusively. Look, all in all, my thoughts on this are great. It's all great, as far as they did talk about Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. They're saying that the story is not going to change. They said that story is not going to change, but some other things that have been said on Twitter from some of the team kind of hints at it possibly being I think there's going to be a hidden video at the end of the game that gives you a different ending. I think there will be some way to access that. That's just my take. That's been my take. I think that's what they're going to do. But as far as playing through the game and getting all of that I think, yeah, you're going to play through it in its entirety, how it used to play through. It'll be a straight up remake, but I think they will add in a special 5 to 10 minute cutscene at the end of the game, maybe. It wouldn't have to be that long. 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, cutscene, boom, explain what's going on, done, out. But anyway, this was good stuff. I'm really excited about the openness at which they're presenting themselves now. They're being very open. They're being very, a little less vague about things. Of course, they can't come out and tell us the plot. They can't spoil the surprises, but they are coming out things like, okay, in the next information release, we're gonna tell you how open world's gonna work, all this other stuff. And they were very, very clear about what their production cycle has been for all these games. And judging by this and what they've said, I fully think we could be playing the final part of this trilogy in 2026. I really feel like, 2020, what be 2026? 2026? Maybe even as early as 2025. That might be wishful thinking. But if they're already working on the scenario and plot for the third game right now, and the next game doesn't actually come out for a year and a half, they will be well into working on part 3 when Rebirth drops. So, food for thought. That's something to think of. This is good stuff. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. I just got done working on my stuff in the studio for the day. I saw a lot of this. A lot of you all were sending me stuff, and I appreciate you all. Shout out to everybody who makes theory crafting and content creation fun. I thank you all. All of you who make this job easy and fun, I appreciate all of you all. And remember, it's not about those that don't. It's about those that do. Always have that attitude, and as always, y'all have a great night, be safe, be good to each other, and keep rocking. I will see you all in the next video. Take care. I want to say a quick thank you to my YouTube and Patreon members and supporters. If you would like to support the future creation of content on this channel, get some few extra perks and some art sent to your door every month, consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. Details and links are in the video description.